Hi everybody! Today's going to be a requested video because I was asked to show how I would go about colouring black feathers. And as this month has wings as a theme, I thought that would fit in quite nicely. I'm going to be working on this lady here. She is from Wing Fantasy Special Colouring Heaven by Adele Lorienne. And as you may be able to see there, she has already been started with these black feathers, and that is because this is my second time filming this tutorial. The first time I downloaded another camera app for my phone, see if I could get any better results without these weird kind of flickering effects going on, but it was a more complicated, more fancier one, and I couldn't get to grips with the controls. I filmed this tutorial to try and maybe get used to them, and I quickly realised once I was trying to edit the video that I hadn't actually turned autofocus off, so there was a whole new set of issues I would have had to deal with there, so I figured it might be easier just to film the tutorial again. That's just to explain why. You can see she has already been started there. And the plan is, as the original plan was, is to show you here how I colour the black feathers with just the white paper as a backing there, with just the pencils. And this side I have actually used some markers, just the Ohuhu markers, as a base there to show how having each different colour as a background affects the same pencils that we use over here. So I have done exactly the same pencils and methods as I've used over here, but just on top of markers, so we can see how each different marker affects those colours. And just another little note, I have brought in another lamp to see if that will help with these flickering and kind of artifacts I had going on. So there might be a few shadow issues. This is the first time I've tried filming with 3 different lamps going at the same time. But we'll see how it goes. So I'll zoom us in and we'll get started. Okay, before we start, I'll show you the colours that I've picked out to colour these feathers. And I've tried to keep all within one pencil set. Usually I do like to mix and match my pencils and I just use whichever one is closest to hand usually. But this time I have tried to keep to my Arteza set in case anybody does want to try and colour match with their pencils. And I will again link the colour match chart down below from my Colourful Country Life, which is really handy in case anybody wants to use that and try that with their own pencils. So of course feel free to experiment and try whichever pencils you like. These are the ones I have picked out though. I've got my usual Polychromos black and white, black looking a little bit battered, but those are the black and the white. I've picked out the charcoal grey, which is A015 from Arteza. I have the midnight blue, which is A515. That one might not be showing up too well on this camera, but we'll have to see. And this one is called smoke grey. The colour and the number have worn off that one, but that one is smoke grey there. So those are the colours I've picked out to do these feathers. I'm going to start with these longer kind of flight feathers we have going on at the bottom of her wing here, because those are the easiest ones to show the detail on. And as we get further up her wing, with these smaller feathers and to these really small ones at the top, the detail that we're using will get less and less as we go further up the wing, because as the feathers get smaller you won't be able to see so much detail there, so we won't be showing as much. We're just going to give a bit of an impression of featheriness going on up there towards the top of her wing. But down the bottom here we have the most detail, and you can see on this one, here's one I've done earlier, that this is the main idea we're going to be going for. We're going to try and show the way that the feathers are made, or the way they grow rather, is probably a better way to say it, the way that they grow, which is with the main quill, or like this big stem down the middle of the feather, and all these little kind of fluffy strands, or I think they're called barbs. They come off the main quill, there down the middle, and they make these little fluffy edges of the feather, and that's the detail we're going to show in these bigger feathers, this kind of main stem down the middle and all these little kind of strokes coming off of it to give that impression of the barbs of the feather. Let's find one that'll be easy to show. This one already has the main quill drawn onto it, although of course if there isn't one you can map in your own, just very lightly like that. If there isn't one you can map in your own like that and just work from that. And as these feathers are going to be black, the first colour I do go in with is the black. This is the Polychromos black. Although I may vary the order I use my colours in, I just play things by ear as usual. As you all know, if you've been following my channel, I play things by ear. So the order I use the colours might vary from feather to feather. What I do is make sure that I've got this main stem marked out, the quill down the middle, and then if there's any areas of shadow, I just fill those in just as a flat colour. But what we're trying to project here is the idea of these strokes coming down from that main stem in the middle, or quill. Terminology is not my strong point, so yeah, I'll probably call it a stem down the middle. In the shadows, as we have there, the detail will be getting harder to see, so yeah, we don't have to show every little single stroke of these feathers. We're just giving an impression at the moment. And again for this one here, hopefully my hand's not in the way and we can see what I'm actually doing. We're doing these strokes leading away from the main kind of stem down the middle of the feather. And as this line art is showing here, sometimes these barbs, I think they were called, coming away from the center line, they're not completely smooth. It's kind of like when you're drawing hair, it's always not completely smooth. And as we saw there with the line art, there was a break that we put in with that slightly darker colour as we are into the shadows underneath. And you can add in a few more of those little breaks in the line of the feather like this to make it look a little bit more kind of natural. And as a little note, I have already done a tutorial on white feathers for the Colouring Heaven YouTube channel, so I will link that one down below. And the principle is exactly the same, just with different colours. And for these little breaks in the barbs here, you'd be using the darkest shadow colour, just to show that there is dark shadows underneath that one where it crosses over the other feather. I'm hoping these feathers turn out as well as these ones on the other side that I did earlier. But yeah, it's showing the idea. You can see what we're aiming for here. So I've done a little bit of the black there. I'm just going to grab the midnight blue, especially in the darker areas to show a little bit of that sheen. The black feathers tend to get like a magpie or a raven maybe, with a slightly iridescent black feathers. So I'm adding a little bit of that midnight blue in. As I said, especially in the darker areas. Hopefully that is picking up on the camera, but there is a very, very light touch of that midnight blue there. We've got our charcoal grey. And keeping to the idea of these strands, almost as if you're colouring hair, putting in the strands of the feather coming away from that middle. And keeping the darker colours to the darker areas where it would be in shadow, because it's underneath all these different feathers here, so we're going to have a lot of shadow going on there. And the smoke grey is for the lightest areas where the light would be hitting our feather. Might have gone a little bit too light on this one, but it's just to show the technique that this is what I do. And with this lightest colour, I'm not doing much of the diagonal kind of stroke idea that we have going on up here. I'm just filling in a little bit of colour on the ends there. Because as with the lighter colours, you probably wouldn't be able to see a lot of that detail going on. And of course, as per usual, we can come in, work a little bit more, give more layers. And I'm adding in a little bit of shadow to the side of that big main quill down the middle there. Might come in some more with that darker blue in my shadows. Again, as I said, just sort of playing with the colours, seeing if I can get something good happening there. And with the white, you can bring in the white Polychromos or blending pencil around the edges to soften those out a little bit. So the lines aren't so harsh, we can make it look a little bit more blended there. And I'm coming in with the black. There we go, that's looking a little bit better. I'm pressing a lot harder there. Hopefully my hand wasn't in the way. It's hard to remember to keep out of the way, but yeah. With the darker areas, with the black there going in. And emphasising the kind of stroke lines to show those strands of the feather coming away from the main stem in the middle. Let's bring in a little bit more blue. We're not quite working as well this time, but we don't want the feather to actually look as if it is blue, so maybe we need to bring in the grey a little bit more, the charcoal grey. Well, that's more like it. And the main stem down the middle, I've done in a really light grey, so I've shaded the top and the bottom kind of ends with the smoke grey, just to make it look as if it's a really light grey or maybe even a white there. As I think I did explain when I first tried recording this tutorial, my explanations are not always the best, so hopefully you can actually see what I'm doing there and get the general idea. It's mainly taking those colours, playing with them, trying to get something that sort of looks like a feather going on. And I did come in with a white gel pen for a few highlights along the edges that would be getting the most light, and for a little bit down the middle, showing that main stem to show the structure of the feather. There we go, we've got that working now, I think. As you can see, I just play with the colours, keep going in for more of those strokes, not worrying about losing too much detail in the shadow, because in the shadow there wouldn't be that much detail anyways. But keep going in, different layers with all those pencils, keeping the lighter colours would be towards the edges of the feather. I can probably show you a lot better on the ones I've already done. Keeping the lighter colours to the edges, to the ends of these little bobs here, and towards the very pointed end of the feather, because that's when the most kind of space would be between these little bobs, so you would get more lighter tones coming in there. And I think it did show the first time that I filmed this, when you have a feather that's kind of side on like this, you're just looking at one kind of edge of the feather, like looking this way, so all you can see is this part and the very top of the main stem down the middle. When that happens, you just keep your strokes going the one way. I'll just sketch in here a little bit roughly where that main stem would be coming there. And then because we are only seeing kind of half of the feather there, we just keep our strokes going the one way, away from that main stem. Making sure we keep a little bit of shadow going there. We're darker in the shadows. We have another feather under there, so that will be fairly dark. We can bring in a couple of little breaks in those bobs there, as there are some indicated by the line art there. If you do have any lines in the line art kind of indicating the way that your feather will be kind of growing, then yeah, then we work with those, kind of incorporate those in. A little bit easier when the feathers are black, because yeah, you can go slightly dark and blend that line art in. And as we're getting towards the end of the feather there, I'm lightening off, because that would be lighter towards the very end of the feather, as there's more gaps between the strands or the bobs there. So that's the Polychromos black. Is it called Midnight Blue? Yeah, Midnight Blue. A little bit of indication of that, especially in the darkest areas. Show that when the light is hitting that, we're getting a little bit of that iridescence. Charcoal grey. Exactly the same idea, just kind of doing half of the feather though, really. But aside from that, exactly the same. And we have the smoke grey. Bring it in for the edges of the feathers. And of course, feathers can be many different colours. Not just black or white. Some of them are striped or patterned, depending on what kind of bird you're trying to depict there. But the main idea is just to have a few shades of that colour. Most colours would be slightly easier than trying to show black or white, I would imagine. It's black or white, you have to be a little bit creative to show what's actually going on there, without just being plain black or plain white. I'm quiet, I'm trying to figure out how to actually show this one to bring in that line of the middle there. I think we got something going on. We are in the shadow with this one here though. As I was saying a minute ago, feathers do come in many different colours. And I think the main idea is to pick a few shades. And how I would do it is to go in with the darkest shade first, graduate out to your lighter colours. This is the charcoal grey. Yep, I'm getting in a slightly different order. I think I've been going in with the blue next up till now, but yeah, as I've said, I do that. But yeah, 3 different shades maybe. Go in with the darkest first, then the second darkest, and the lightest. Save the lightest for the ends. Here I am coming in with the midnight blue there, trying to keep that impression of the main stem down the middle of this feather. And hopefully being able to see what I'm doing will explain a lot better than me trying to explain it myself. And we're just shading that main stem a little bit there. As many layers as you want. Everything as usual, completely optional. Just keep going until you've got something that you are happy with, that you think looks like could be a black feather there. We'll just come in with the white here. Apologies if you can hear the neighbours banging their car doors. Something else that's par for the course, I'm afraid. I do apologise. But yeah, we're just blending in the edges of that feather there. And normally I wouldn't suggest using black, as it does tend to make colours look a little bit dull. But these are black feathers, so yeah, you can kind of justify it with those being actually black feathers. And I'll come in with the white just a little bit. I'll add a little bit to these main stems, or quills, did I say, down the middle there. A few little highlights for the edges. And I just like to play with my white gel pens. I do love to come in with it for highlights. Obviously that's completely optional. So there we go. That is how I would do these bigger feathers. As we come in further up the wing, her feathers are getting smaller and smaller, so we're getting less and less detail. So as we get further up here, I would go from maybe putting in every individual strand to maybe just trying to give a sort of indication of it. It's probably easier to show you than to try and explain, because yeah, as I said, I'm not the best at explaining. A few of these do have the main stem down the middle, so if they do, I was going with that, and rather than putting in every little strand, I was giving a sort of scribbly motion there, indicating the direction that these strands would be going in. Just to give the idea there is something the same as we have here going on up further towards the top. So we scribble that way there, and we scribble the other way for the other side, just to give a kind of impression that we do have the same kind of effect going on up here. And the smaller the feathers get, then the less and less detail we would be seeing. So as long as we have some kind of scribbly sort of indication of fluffiness going on up here, I think we're good. As we can see there, just a little bit of an indication that we do have this fluffiness going on. And as we get further and further towards the top, less and less detail, as you can see up here. So for these, sticking to the same colours, keeping it kind of scribbly to give that indication that there is those soft kind of feather barbs going on there. So that was the midnight blue. This is the smoke grey. Probably completely out of order again. I think I missed out the charcoal grey that time. Again, just keep going until you get something that you're happy with. This is the charcoal grey. A little bit of an indication of a split in the feather there. The general idea is that if you have the detail in the bigger feathers here, then your mind would kind of accept that there would be the same kind of detail as you get further up. So as long as we have some kind of indication of it, our mind would be expecting it, and that's what we would think was up there, if that makes sense. And again, I like to come in with the white gel pen, but entirely optional. I probably use it a little bit too much, but yeah, this is how I would colour feathers. Just adding a few little highlights, not going into too much detail there. The same kind of idea of putting in the shadow with kind of a more solid colour. And as the feathers come out into the light, we get the lighter colours and a little bit of that white detail there. Maybe not the most realistic way to colour feathers, but yeah, she is some sort of a fantasy creature, something like an angel, I think. But not quite with black wings, I wouldn't imagine. Okay, that sort of shows how I would do the smaller feathers. See the ones I did earlier there, and that's what we carried on to do here. Just a sort of indication. And as you get further and further towards the top, there'd be less and less detail. So you just want to concentrate on showing the main shapes of the feathers, rather than getting bogged down with too much detail here. So I'm putting in the main kind of areas of shadow there, following the line art, taking that to be the main shapes of the feathers. I'm just making it look as if there are shapes sort of overlapping each other there. This is the charcoal grey. Kind of keeping it a little bit scribbly, as I've said, to show that there is some sort of texture. That's the main point. I think the texture, when you're doing feathers, they're not flat and smooth. They do have the texture. So we need it to look a little bit fluffy. Midnight blue. Hopefully it's showing on camera. It didn't very well the first time, but then I was having issues with the zoom, so. The midnight blue. Smoke grey. Just playing with those colours to give some sort of effect. Blending it with the white. These ones would be a lot softer and fluffier up here. Can't remember if I used the charcoal grey, so we'll go in with a little bit of charcoal grey. But up here we are concentrating on showing the shadows. These kind of clumps of feathers, we're showing the shape of those clumps of feathers with a few highlights around the edges there. A few little bits of gel pen just to add to that kind of idea of texture. We have quite a bit of her wing done there now, and as you can see, as I first demonstrated here on my failed tutorial, it's exactly the same kind of idea with the main line going down the middle, these barbs or strands coming out from the outside as if you're drawing hair. Give that impression that there is layers of these barbs coming out, adding in the darker colours in the shadows, the lighter towards the ends, and then bringing in the white, which is of course completely optional, the white gel pen to add a few little highlights along the edges. I'm going over towards her other wing now. If I can get her all on camera there. There we go. I have to kind of angle her a little bit. You can see that I've used some markers as base here on the other side. These are the Ohuhu markers. And I've tried 4 different colours here, starting lighter at the top and then gradually getting darker towards the bottom. That was my idea, just to try out and see which of these markers kind of looked the best as being a base for black wings. I think I've used all of them at some point or other, and I've never really compared and contrasted them to see what the kind of effect was overall. So I've written down the numbers here. This one here is BG205, and over the top there I have used exactly the same colours and exactly the same methods. Doing the main shadows with the black, coming in with the midnight blue, charcoal grey and the smoke grey. And if you do use a marker for the background, you can bring in the white for highlights along the edges, because the white does stand out. You could, on the pencil side, if you're just using pencils, try and leave a little bit of white paper to show where these highlights would actually come, but that is, I find it tricky, so yeah, I do tend to fall back to the white gel pen. I probably should practice just having the white paper show through, but yeah. But anyways, yeah, you can bring in the white pencil as the highlights around the edges here. And using exactly the same colours. As we can see, I've done exactly the same colours here. This one is BG205, which is a blue-grey, sort of a mid-tone blue-grey. And this is how well those colours work there. And this one is PB2 Marine Blue. And this is the main one I use when I'm colouring hair, black hair, because this kind of desaturated sort of blue-grey seems to work really well to me. So this is the one that I do use quite a lot when I'm doing black hair. And I've gone in with exactly the same colours, the black, midnight blue, the smoke grey and the white. So that's how well this one is working out here. This one here is Cool Grey 208, which is a very, very dark cool grey. And on the first video I did actually colour these in so we could see how the colours kind of built up exactly the same. But yeah, the same methods, exactly the same methods I've done over here with the putting in the strands, making sure you've got the main stem down the middle, the main quill. And this is how the colours work on the cool grey. Again, the white pencil could be used as highlights along the edge instead of the white gel pen, or as well of, as I've done there. So as well as the white gel pen, I've brought in the white pencil and the white gel pen there. All the other colours are exactly the same, the black, midnight blue, the smoky grey. So that's how that works on the Cool Grey 208. And at the bottom we have the Prussian blue, which is a really deep blue. And this is the one I used to use at first when I first started colouring as a background, before I moved on to realise that maybe these ones are the ones I kind of lean towards at the moment. But I thought I'd bring it in and try, just to show the difference between the different markers that I have used in the past. And this is how the colours work on the Prussian blue. Exactly the same colours, the black, the midnight blue. But unfortunately the midnight blue, if I can show a little bit here, the midnight blue is not that different to the actual Prussian blue. I'm having to press pretty hard there to get that to show up. It's slightly different. But yeah, the midnight blue, not that different to the actual Prussian blue there. So, although that's an effect all on its own, so I'll leave it up to you guys to, if you do want to use markers as a base, which one of these you think works the best. As I said, personally, I tend to lean towards the marine blue or a dark cool grey like this one. And you could even come in with a slightly lighter blue. I think I tried that when I first filmed this tutorial. I just had this Crayola light blue lying around, but you can come in with a lighter blue for the highlights as well as the smoke grey. Just on the lighter edges, kind of as a contrast to the darker blue. Where I was using the darker blue in the darker areas, I brought in that lighter blue a little bit in the lighter areas. This is the charcoal grey. Yeah, you can, just as a little bit of an experiment to see how that would work. I think I brought it a very tiny touch of it in, maybe around here, I think. I'll zoom us out now for a bit of an overview. We can see how all these markers are all working differently there, and see how our wing lugs now have coloured a few more of those feathers. There we go, I've zoomed us out a little bit there so we can see the difference between all these markers here. Not super much difference as looking onto the camera. I still prefer either one of these two, I think, although this one does give you more scope, I think, to come on with maybe a little tint of purple to work into that one there. Not so much this one, as I don't think a purple would show up super well. The midnight blue wasn't showing up super well there. I don't know if it was showing up on camera at all, but that is the difference between those 4 different markers there. I will leave all the numbers down in the description. They are exactly the same colours, with the exception of the light blue I brought in as a little bit of an experiment. They are the exact same colours I've used here, just using the pencils on the white paper. So overall we can see the difference there between just using the pencils on the white paper and using the markers as a background. Of course, using the pencils, just the pencils on the paper, that is a little bit more labour intensive, with having the white colour coming through, especially if you're doing black feathers. With lighter colours, not so much, but with black feathers, yeah, the white paper, you do have to work a little bit harder to either blend that in or cover it up, either way. You could, as I said, try leaving little bits of the white paper coming through on the edges of the feathers as highlights instead of bringing in the white gel pen. But I do find that a little bit fiddly and a little bit tricky, so I tend to, yeah, just fall back on the white gel pen more often than not. I know I shouldn't, but that's just the way I like to work, and it's fun. So yeah, that's what I like to go for. But anyway, hopefully that's been a little bit interesting or informative for you guys. Hopefully bringing in the extra lamp has helped and there hasn't been too many shadow issues going on. But if you did enjoy the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Take care, and I'll see you in future videos. Bye.